Okay, I guess while we wait for the Minister of Finance, let me quickly remind you that Martin, you're going to be around. Martin Davis is around as a member of the panel that will talk about building resilient economy for the future. So Martin, you'll be around as a member of this panel. And of course, we have Yomi Olugbenro, who's also part of the first panel, Oluseyi Arowolo, who is the West Africa International Trade and Regulatory Services Leader at Deloitte, Nigeria, as well as the country representative for the World Health Organization, Dr. Walter Kazide Mulumbo. We will appreciate your presence as well at this panel, of course, Martinez. So 4 panel members and a moderator will take you through that, our first panel for about 40 minutes, building a resilient economy for the future. Taking that out of what Martin spoke about earlier, and I particularly love the water cycle. You know, how water goes, evaporation, the condensation, then it all comes down and it goes back up again. I just love that. That's a whole lot of weather. You can read the weather a lot, Martin. I love the weather, by the way. But again, part of the weather right now, the long winter in the Western Hemisphere is proving very fatal, and perhaps we could just get some sunshine across Africa, the Sahara, all the way down to the Western Hemisphere. Thank you so much, Martin. Very informative and practical. Break it down. So let's just quickly allow the Finance Minister to get into the room, get settled for our presentation. I think we'll go straight, taking Martin Davies' presentation, and let's build a resilient first panel. And I'm going to be handing over to the gentleman who is facilitating the first panel, which I just introduced earlier, and that will be the gentleman who will be doing the first panel. That will be where is my friend on the Sheyarolo?
Thank you, Bolson, and joining me to dissect the first issue of the day, which is building a resilient economy for the future in Nigeria, is a very distinguished panel of discussants who you have alluded to. So on my panel this morning, I have Ari Hysen, Country Director for Nigeria, IMF. I have Dr. Walter Kazadi Mulumbo, WHO Country Rep in Nigeria, but I understand he will be represented by Dr. Francis Ukwije. Of course, Dr. Martin Davis, who just presented, is also on my panel. He's the Managing Director, Emerging Markets and Africa, Deloitte. And my one and only West Africa tax leader, Yomi Olugbenro. With this gentleman, we will analyze the current state of the economy and policies aimed at restoring growth and build resilience. They will look at the impact of the Economic Sustainability Plan, the Finance Act 2020, the 2021 budget, and other priority areas. And we will evaluate the impact of the 2021 budget and the underlying parameters, such as exchange rate, GDP, inflation, and other relevant monetary fiscal policy measures. Given our very limited time for this session, I will urge my panelists to keep their responses very crispy but concise. And on this note, I would like to kick off with Harry. I welcome you all, my panelists. So Harry, I have a question for you, which is 2 questions in one. The first one is, how do you determine, what are the parameters that the IMF consider for a resilient economy, and whether the current monetary policies that we have in place in Nigeria are adequate or sufficient to drive growth and build a resilient economy? Over to you, Ari.
Thank you, Chair, for these questions, and thank you, Deloitte, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. So on your first question, and I paid very close attention to Martin's presentation, which was excellent. I think the issue of resilience is the capacity of the economy to withstand shocks Shocks happen, they may be idiosyncratic, unanticipated, and depending on the economy buffers, the economy can withstand better, mitigate some of the effects of these shocks. Part of the mitigation comes from being diversified, as Martin well mentioned. If you depend on one commodity and the price of this commodity is volatile, and you do not have buffers, you will probably be very procyclical. So your economy will follow this commodity price. And that's actually a problem, because growth, inflation, employment, they all become more volatile together with this natural resource, the price of this natural resource. It happens with other shocks as well. So the ability of an economy to be resilient depends on buffers and the policy setting over a long period of time to be able to mitigate at least and diminish the amplitude of the effects of the shocks on macroeconomic variables. So that's how we think about resilience of an economy. Now, to your question on monetary policy, here we have to differentiate. We are in a pandemic, and it's natural that a central bank, as much as the Ministry of Finance, would like to support the economy during this downturn. And we see monetary policy stance as appropriate at the moment in Nigeria, because first, the central bank took important measures that we actually found timely in 2020 when the pandemic hit. They subsidized some of the credit lines that the central bank offered to the private sector on one hand, and on the other hand, also tried to ease the burden of the situation on borrowers by relaxing a little bit some of its regulations and by giving some forbearance. I mean, these are unprecedented times, atypical, and it's natural that the central bank would like to support. Now, going forward, eventually, that sustained support to the economy through monetary policy, that we're speaking in particular, should then give way to the primacy of the inflation objective. Inflationary pressures have been growing. Many of them in Nigeria are supply side. They are related to food prices and others. If you've seen, the central bank itself in the last two meetings have maintained interest rates, have not reduced interest rates. So it's understanding that despite the need to support the economy, and as I said, monetary policy stance is appropriate at the moment because of that, eventually, because of inflationary pressures, the central bank is concerned, as any central bank should be, with inflationary pressures. So I would expect, we'll have to wait and see, but as we move forward out of this crisis, that more attention will be placed to inflation, and certainly to balance of payments potential problems that may actually affect economic activity and inflation. And the central bank, because the primacy of the inflationary objective within central bank, is going to be paying more attention to that development.
Thank you, Harry. I may probably explore that further with you because there is a section of the Nigerian public that believes that the IMF is part of the challenge rather than the solution for building a resilient economy in Nigeria. But let me dash quickly to Walter. I'm ably represented by Dr. Francis Ukwije, because Martins alleged that there seems to be a marginalization in terms of development of Africa or homegrown vaccines. So I would like to ask Walter or Francis, what insights the WHO has on the efforts being put in place to secure COVID-19 vaccine for Africa, and in particular, Nigeria. Francis, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sheye. And thank you, Deloitte, for inviting us. Congratulations on this economic forum. I will apologize on behalf of Dr. Walter, who is the WHO Nigeria representative, for not being able to make it here. I would say that the COVID-19 pandemic, as it affects Nigeria, is not only just a medical challenge in Nigeria, but it touches upon the whole of life and livelihood of Nigerians, including the economy. And I'm going to be looking at what David Martin had mentioned earlier about how this has affected the economic outlook of the country. And we know that it looks like the COVID-19 has further worsened the economic situation of Nigerians. And the estimate is that about additional 10.9 million Nigerians will be pushed into poverty by 2022 by COVID-19. So what that means is that we need to do more. The government of Nigeria, supported by partners, including the WHO at the forefront, is doing a lot in terms of the COVID-19 response. But the vaccines will be the game changer. And at the moment, being a government-led intervention, the government of Nigeria has developed the national COVID-19 vaccines deployment and introduction plan that has marshaled out this plan to be phased into 4. So the very first phase is looking at a very smaller portion of the society, which is mainly the health workers, frontline health workers. And this also will include the very strategic leaders like Mr. President and others. So the second priority group are people that are 50 years and above. And the third priority group is people below 50 years with significant comorbidities. And the last priority, which is priority 4 in the 4th phase, will be other risk groups that are not covered in these other phases. And it's expected that about 70% of the population of Nigeria would have been vaccinated by the end of 2022. Suffice it to say that Nigeria has planned to introduce a number of vaccines, especially those of them that the WHO has already approved for use in the country. By the first quarter of this year, so we would have got the first set of vaccines coming into Nigeria to deal with the first phase. But it looks like there are a lot of support that will be coming to make this happen for Nigeria. So there is this COVID-19 vaccine facility, the COVAX facility, and then there is some support that will be coming from the African Union, and the government of Nigeria is expected to finance the remaining. I'm happy the Honorable Minister of Finance and National Planning is here. They have made a lot of effort to ensure that there is funding to finance these vaccines. Now, to your question, in ensuring that there is local vaccine production. So what I had mentioned earlier is looking at the vaccines that have been developed outside the country, and we hope to bring into the country. There are a lot of work that go into vaccine production. So the Honorable Minister of Health and Mr. President working together with the WHO and other partners and the scientists in Nigeria are really working on vaccine candidates for Nigeria. A number of them have already been developed, that are going through series of assessment. So we hope that with the very high commitment and political leadership in Nigeria, Nigeria will be announcing maybe in no distant time, perhaps a candidate for vaccine candidate for the country. But it will be useful to note that without waiting for the vaccines that will be produced in Nigeria, Nigeria needs to move very quickly in ensuring that we get access to these vaccines so that we begin to reap the benefits that are very, very huge. Part of what we need to pay attention to is that these vaccines at the moment are being used in the other countries that we know are superpowers. A few days ago, the WHO Director General had a press conference, a joint press conference with the Director General of UNICEF. And what they are saying is that there needs to be an equitable distribution of these vaccines, not just to the superpowers of the world, but we need to also ensure that countries like Nigeria would be able to have these vaccines to support not just the health of Nigerians, but again, to recover the economy that is actually going the other side. I think I will stop at this point, but I will say that the effort so far is good enough, but we expect, and again, I have to say I'm happy that the Minister of Finance is here. We hope that the country will continue in their effort because it looks like the efforts are yielding good results because we are seeing some decline in the AP curve of Nigeria over the past 2 weeks. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Francis, for that insightful response. I will still explore some of the areas with you when I come back. But let me quickly ask Martin a question. And Martin, you know, one of the reasons why I like listening to you is the fact that you provide on-the-ground analysis. You travel across Africa, you know what the attributes of the markets are. I would like to ask, in the light of the global pandemic and the global trends that we see, what should be the focus of business in terms of short, medium term perspectives, especially now that you have mentioned 4 scenarios of new dawn, sun showers, hard rain, and endless winter, which I dread. So Martin, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Look, it's a tough question. I mean, everyone uses the usual stereotypical words like, you know, resilience and agility and consolidation, but like, you know, I think what happens during any crisis is that it's about frugality. It's about protecting capital. It's about protecting people, your core people as a business. And I think increasingly is, you know, a problem is you have in a country like Nigeria, and Nigeria is very different in that the entire business confidence is, the indicator is the oil price. And, you know, it's the great intangible driver of growth is confidence. And without that, you know, it's a very, everything else is great, but without confidence, you ain't going nowhere, I'd say. So what is the role of business now? Business needs to continue doing what it does, of course, as best as possible. Business must also, I think, increasingly put pressure on governments at all levels to act in a fashion that is very enabling. Nigeria, like South Africa, like many other countries in our region, we lack the fiscal headspace. But ultimately, it's about creating we see the vaccinations now. We have the same challenges down here in the southern part of the continent. It's about having a highly functional state that can do whatever it needs to do to support business in whatever way possible. We're not talking active, subsidization and the like here, but it's just about, trying to be more functional, more pragmatic. I think it's more a question of what the state can do to support. Business will always react in short-term pragmatic fashion, as business does. But for me, the bigger question is, and this is a very sort of esoteric maybe answer, is how do state institutions react in more very responsive manners that can better protect GDP, protect jobs, protect economic activity during these very challenging times, to say the least.
So Martin, are you suggesting that it's a macroeconomic issue and there is really nothing that businesses can do in the short term and medium term to at least cope with these challenges?
Well, as I said,
I'm not asking you to give a free opinion, but just a perspective.
I'll give you every opinion. It's all for free. Whether it's right or not, it's another story. But I think for me, it's of course business will shore up balance sheet, protect capital, protect people, do what it needs to do, and wait for better days. Wait for sort of an easing of it. I think a lot of us have a very much of almost a siege mentality right now. A lot of firms do. That's my observations. But I think at the same time, I mean, look at the times like now. I mentioned earlier the free trade agenda. Now, I'm somewhat skeptical about a Pan-African, truly continental free trade arrangement. The geography is just too disparate and too wide. But at a more local level, within Nigeria, within the region, it's very important. This is maybe more relevant for smaller countries in terms of demographics than a country like Nigeria, but the markets are arguably unviable. Markets are unable to operate in such small economies. You have to build, have to be a consolidation, a greater sort of economy of scale, if you will. So how do small economies in West Africa start to liberalize? Doing the counterintuitive at times of crisis. And one of the questions I saw in the Q&A panel was talking about import substitution. I don't think import substitution is not industrial strategy. It's not. But countries seem to be a bit more, they retreat into a more sort of unilateral position. I think that's wrong. I think at the same time, business needs to be doing more to integrate itself in a region perhaps, and not so much often rely on sovereigns to act, rather act on maybe, arguably organized business or even sizable companies who have the influence to do this, to be more, how can I say, more market fundamentalist, more free marketeer, more free trade. It's counterintuitive during times of challenge or crisis, but this is, I think, what we really need to do. And countries in Africa need to. This is the Asia story, not just Asian countries, but provinces in China, where countries, territories need to differentiate themselves, and they need to compete for capital. It's not just financial capital. Most importantly, it's human capital, and that really is what Nigerian states and sovereign states in West Africa need to increasingly do, is differentiate, liberalize, be more functional at the state level, ultimately drive competitiveness, and differentiate yourselves from one's neighbors. I think that's the real play here for me in the region.
Thank you, Martin. I will still come back to explore some issues with you, but let me make a quick dash to my West Africa tax leader, Yomi Olubenro. I know he's itching very much to make some critical input. Now, if I take something from the comment or remarks by my CEO, he alluded to the fact that we are looking to about 70% of the budget to be funded from non-oil sources, which a significant amount of this will be from tax. Yomi, you've appeared on so many channels and platforms to talk about this. What should Nigerians expect in terms of the tax landscape, bearing in mind that we are in a pandemic and there is a need to strike a balance between tax regulators and taxpayer expectations? Over to you, Yomi.
All right, thank you, Sheye. You're right. If you look at the budget 2021, Much lower than 30% is being expected from oil tax revenue sources. Actually, it's within the range of about 25% of the budgeted revenue. But if we look at the mix, we will understand that the reason why the oil share is that low, it's not so much because the non-oil tax revenue has increased significantly, right? So what we have for non-oil tax revenue is actually below 20%. So the bulk of the expected revenue of about 7.9 trillion in total that the federal government is expecting to make in 2021 is coming from independent and other sources. And that's about almost 55% of that is coming from independent and other sources. So what the government has acknowledged is that the environment and the business climate is such that there can't be a reasonable expectation of a massive jump in oil, in tax revenue, and therefore government has proactively looked into the direction of other independent sources that it can use to fund the budget for 2021. And even the entire capital spending, there's a huge portion of deficit that is inherent in that is dependent on local and external borrowing. The deficit number alone, if you look at it, of about 5.7 trillion, is almost 4 times the amount the federal government intends to raise from non-oil tax revenue. So it's not so much of the growing base of the non-oil tax revenue, but so much of looking in the direction of government operating entities. What can we do creatively to save on costs and from this entity and be able to put more money to the center? Now, what does this say because your question is targeting the tax landscape? I think there's still a long road to travel in growing our non-oil tax revenues base in the country. And that's why, for me, I think the focus on taxes will continue for a long time to come. But I think the good news for 2021 is that as far as the current year is concerned, government recognize that the state of the economy is too fragile to have increases in taxes or to even contemplate introducing another type of tax. So there are no new taxes for 2021. There is no increase, at least no direct increases in tax rates. In fact, the different provisions we have in the Finance Act 2020, most of the provisions offer palliatives and incentive to taxpayer. For example, the cut in the minimum tax rate to by half to 50%. Exemption of the minimum wage earner, those who are at the very low end of the spectrum, from personal income taxes. You have extension of the tax exemption that micro and small businesses enjoying to now include education taxes, and a number of those provisions. So what the government has done is to say, in the short term, we recognize that this economy is at a state where we can't push more pressure again on the taxpayer, whether individual on the corporate side. So what the Revenue Authority will do for 2021 will be essentially to optimize collection from the existing tax types and how to leverage technology, data, intelligence, so that they can collect more from the existing taxpayer and make sure that the tax penetration is deepened. And we've seen that revenue authorities are increasingly embracing technology, more and more at the state and at the federal level. What this will do is that it will not only make paying taxes more easier, but I think it will also greatly enhance their capacity to gather intelligence, to be more efficient in tackling evasion. So small businesses or corporate taxpayer who probably have been handling their tax compliance process in a slightly different way need to recognize that with the increasing use of technology, there's need to be a lot more transparency and proactivity so that they don't incur penalties. All right, so that's what is going to happen. I also see that because some of the changes we have in the Finance Act 2020 also relates to non-resident companies, digital player with significant economic presence, and trying to bring those who were supposed to be paying taxes in Nigeria and who haven't done that. There will be a lot of focus by the revenue authorities on getting their Nigerian customers and associates of these foreign businesses to bring them into compliance. So corporates also need to review their operating model, and make sure that their relationship with counterparties who are trading from outside of the country is reviewed from a tax perspective, so that entities who may potentially bring them into rounds of question with the Revenue Authority, they can proactively deal with that. So that's what we will have in the interim. And as the economy continue to recover, sufficiently, the expectation is that in the future, there's a very likelihood that government will then revisit some of these taxes, and to see which one we can raise the base. I know there have been a lot of focus on indirect taxes lately, which is the right way to go. VAT, customs and excise, stamp duty. So, but that will be a matter for the future. In the interim, it's about making sure that the compliance process is optimized by taxpayers, and trying to ensure that the provisions of the Finance Act is critically analyzed. Some will create some extra pressure on the need for transparency and accountability, and all of that, but to also leverage those that provide cushion and palliative, so that ultimately the business can thrive, using our word in Deloitte in the current year.
Thank you, Yomi. But you touched on a particular issue and I don't intend this to be a banana peel. You mentioned palliatives. There is a section of the Nigerian taxpayers that believe that the palliatives and fiscal stimulus that the government brought to address the impact of the pandemic are not adequate enough. Do you happen to share this view? And do you foresee any aspect in which improvements can really be made?
Yeah, Shayed, it's quite expected. If you ask anyone whether whatever has been given or whatever government is doing is enough, chances are that you're going to get a unanimous no. If you ask me that same question, I will tell you no. I want more. We all want more.
No, Francis,
but I think
Francis said that government has done enough around fighting COVID-19.
Well, that's maybe on the health side. I think the response of the government from arresting the health emergency, I think is quite phenomenal. We can see the statistics relative to other countries.
We need that phenomenal response around tax.
But I think the reality is that the size of the fiscal headroom is what will determine, how much the government have in its cover to be able to provide a palliative. Some of the things that happened is that ahead of the pandemic last year, I think there was a very timely intervention that was actually intended for a completely different purpose, but that ended up to be the greatest, tax palliative that the government could have introduced. So you recall that the Finance Act 2019 that was signed just few months or few weeks ahead of the pandemic actually did make some provisions, exemptions. That was when we have the novel exemption for micro and small businesses. Individuals have exemption from capital gain taxes on up to 10 million naira if they have compensation for loss of employment and all of that. So these were done ahead of the pandemic. So when the pandemic hit us, from a tax side, what the government could do, in the interim, is just to make sure that the revenue authorities recognize the practicality of the restrictions and the limitations of physical movement, and all of that, and make sure that they could provide other administrative measures. So that's what happened from a tax side. So if the exemptions that were given to micro businesses, for example, weren't given as at the time it was given, it would have been part of the measures that we will be asking for. But I know that a number of individual taxpayers have also did raise voices to say, look, you gave micro businesses tax exemption. How about individuals? And then you have that response in 2020. Now, is that response sufficient? The answer is probably no. I'm sure government will probably also say, we know there's more that we can do, but the truth is that we need to take measured steps, considering the fact that we need to balance, like you also said, raising revenue to still deliver on, all of the promises on health, on infrastructure and all of that, and also provide cushioning. So the way I see it is that, yes, there's a lot more that can be done. There's a lot more that we are asking for, but the steps taken by the government relative to the size of the purse, relative to the fiscal headroom, and if you compare to our comparable, I think it's a good intervention.
Thank you so much, Yomi. I will rush back to Ari now and ask him another 2-in-1 question. So Ari, there is a feeling that Nigeria has a number of capable, competent economists, but there is this feeling that we do not seem to have harnessed those capacities enough in our macroeconomic management approach. Do you share this perspective? And do you think that the CBN should continue to adopt the current interventionist policy around the foreign exchange rate, or should adopt or evaluate a full liberalization of that system in Nigeria? Over to you, Ari.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, policymakers in Nigeria are extremely capable. I have no doubt about that. The challenges have been huge. In fact, not only to Nigeria, to any policymaker around the world. I mean, just in this case of the pandemic, we are talking about a huge shock, and in between health and economics, it has been very difficult. For example, just think about declaring a lockdown, and it's like a sudden stop of economic activity. Which policymaker will take that lightly? It's not an easy shock to deal with. So I think we need to be humble. I was policymaker myself in the past before coming to the IMF, so I feel the difficulties of actually engaging and trying to be innovative, and many times without the resources and reduced space for supporting the economy. This is a major thing to do. So I think we have to be very humble about the difficulties. To your question on the exchange rate, we economists, we don't like to project exchange rates, certainly not for the short term, simply because the exchange rates can go anywhere, and we typically in the profession call these a random walk. It can go anywhere, specifically if the exchange rate is fully flexible. But I don't want to leave you and our colleagues in the panel without an answer. We just published an Article 4 consultation report, and in one of the chapters of this report, we do talk about several models that the team estimated regarding where the real effective exchange rate, which is not the nominal exchange rate, it has foreign inflation, domestic inflation, and the weight of the countries that Nigeria trades with as part of this measurement. But that real effective exchange rate would seem to be on the overvalue side, not by much, but some overvaluation. That would more or less match what we observe in the parallel market premium vis-a-vis the official exchange rate. So if I will have to think about a direction for where the exchange rate would have to be, probably would that to be for a more depreciated naira rather than a more appreciated naira. But I wouldn't comment on how much necessarily, because models are models, reality is the reality. Exchange rates can go to many places, and they will be dependent on various variables, including, as well mentioned by Martin, the price of oil. If the price of oil continues to go up, probably that will positively affect the naira. The same thing, the reverse would happen if the oil prices go down. Also, what portfolio flows will do, other trading partners, what they do and how their economies evolve. is a very important aspect because demand for Nigerian products, including oil, but not only, could go up. So all these things matter a lot, and it becomes very difficult to project, as I was saying before, what the exchange rate will do in the near future. But I think that the direction would be towards a more depreciated naira rather than a less depreciated naira. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Harry. But before I let you go, and there is one of our participants that seem to have read the report you are alluding to, and is asking that in that report, you asserted that to rely on progressive and efficiency enhancing measures with higher value-added and excise tax rates awaiting a firm economic recovery. Quote, is IMF urging the fiscal authorities in Nigeria to raise value-added tax to mobilize more revenue? If yes, how soon could that be? I don't know if you can quickly touch on that before I move to Francis.
Absolutely. These are important sovereign decisions that Nigeria will have to take. But let me just say that in our view, during the current economic situation, this is not a good time in our view to raise tax rates. You certainly would like to wait for the economic recovery to take root before taking such a measure. And it seems that the government is going in this direction, and we find that very reasonable and sensible. Who would want to raise rates when the economy is facing this pandemic? It's very complicated. But we have to think a little bit going forward. So in the short term, what we are saying is that tax compliance would probably be possible to tighten a little bit. So simply because tax revenues as a share of GDP in Nigeria is very low. That share is very low. It's in fact among the lowest around the world. So I think it's very important to have in mind that tax collection would need to increase in Nigeria. Part will come from the economic recovery, but also certainly through two areas: more tax compliance that certainly needs to increase. And going forward, once economic recovery takes root, certainly rates can go up to including on VAT to higher levels, similar to what is observed even in sub-Saharan Africa and in Western Africa. Nigeria still has a much lower VAT rate than other countries. So this shouldn't happen now, but certainly going forward, we think that would be appropriate to consider raising some of the tax rates once economic recovery takes root.
Thank you, Harry, for your response. At least there are some positions in which IMF has found the positions of the Nigerian government very reasonable and laudable. So let me move to Walter. And very quickly, Walter, there is concern about doctor-to-patient ratio in Nigeria. This was there before the pandemic, and this has also escalated since the pandemic. So my question is, to what extent is the Nigerian health sector comparable to what obtained in other African countries from a WHO point of view? Francis.
Thank you very much, Chair. The Nigerian health sector is very unique, and if you know that Nigeria runs a federal system of government, so what that means is that there are three main tiers of government in Nigeria that potentially have authorities around health, and this is the federal, the state, and the local government. So part of what is going on in the country is a situation where there is a kind of a symbiotic relationship between the federal and the states in particular around dealing with health. Now, issues around human resource for health in the whole of the world we can say is one of the Achilles heels in the health sector, and there is no health sector in the whole world that has adequate human resources to take care of their needs. What is happening in Nigeria particularly is a situation where we have more of production of health workers, but many of these health workers do go abroad to seek greener pastures. Given the situation that COVID has brought within the country, so there was a general decline in the provision of health services for the country. If you check data coming from the Federal Ministry of Health, comparing the month in 2019 and then the corresponding months in 2020 and now in 2021, you will see a significant change, a significant reduction in provision of essential health services in terms of antenatal care, people assessing, children assessing immunization, outpatient and inpatient care. All of them reduced due to COVID-19. Of course, there is some form of recovery that we started seeing towards the end of 2020. But that is not just because of the reduction in the number of health workers, but we saw that even though those health workers were there initially, they were not empowered to provide those services as they are needed because they were not protected enough. And of course, the lockdown also restricted movements. So what the federal government has done is to ensure that, and this is with support from the WHO and other partners, so we have appropriate determination of the staffing needs of the country at the moment. And we have developed what we call a health workforce profile that enables the country determine where they are at any time, not only at the federal, but at the state levels. WHO supported the country in developing this and handed that over to the Honorable Minister of Health towards the last quarter of last year. What we will be seeing moving forward is a situation where the country, just by the click of a button, will determine where their health workforce is. Comparing Nigeria with the other countries in Africa is a bit difficult because we know that Nigeria has not only the largest population, but again, we have peculiar situations concerning health based on the political economy that I had mentioned earlier. So many other African countries are mainly unitary states that could take decisions at the center. But in Nigeria, it is not so. So part of what has also happened is a proactive measure by the Federal Ministry of Health and partners in training health workers now, not only for provision of essential health services, but again, in managing emergencies for health security moving forward. As you are aware, the COVID-19 situation is still here with us. As at yesterday, we had not less than 142,000 confirmed cases, with about 116,000 of them having been discharged, and about 1,702 have died. So you see that the situation is still spreading. So part of what we are doing is supporting the government in ensuring that they continue to provide essential health services while also fighting the pandemic using the workforce that they have within the country. I dare say that the introduction of the planned introduction of the COVID vaccine will also bring in its own challenges, because these are new vaccines. Nobody in this country has administered those vaccines before. So it introduces new challenges that the country is now handling in terms of training of those health workers. And these health workers are not just at the federal. They will have to be those even in primary healthcare centers where these vaccines will be deployed. I'll stop at this point.
Thank you so much, Francis. I will come back for your closing remarks, but let me move quickly to Martin. And one of our participants has shot a question across to Martin's, and I will read it out, permit me. He said, government and some other stakeholders have been making submissions that local manufacturing is the way to diversify Nigerian economy. You also alluded to that in your presentation. What are practical ways to achieve this competitively when all indices to support local manufacturing, in bracket, FX, volatility, consumer appetite for imported goods, electricity supply, etc. are weak?
Yeah, thank you. I think I wrote a bit of a response to that question earlier, but I'll say that clearly it's not, industrialization is not a policy switch. We know that. This is it's a generational play. And maybe if I use the word industrialization too ambitiously, maybe the better word is local value addition. And I think for me, it's I know there's been attempts in Nigeria, there's been attempts in South Africa, and they haven't really moved the needle around creating special economic zones. Now, why do countries require special economic zones? Well, is it not indicative of the fact that the national economy simply is not working to create pockets of industrialization or value add? So, and again, taking a leaf out of Asia's book, that was linking a question that was posed earlier, we saw dysfunctional economies in Asia, particularly China, in the late 70s, early 80s, start to experiment with very independent, very well strategically positioned coastal special economic zones. It was as about increasing revenue from exports as it was a national experiment to see what would happen. And the independence of these zones resulted in literally market forces being unleashed. And that for me is something which Nigeria, I'm aware of the Lekki zone, etc. But how can zones be created? It takes strong political will to do so, and have their own sets of unique legislation, particularly, Yomi will know better than anybody, around tax issues and around labor issues. And these dedicated geographic zones can be carved out, if only as experiments. When countries have such low, and provocative point, such very low manufacturing value add, such as Nigeria, what do you have to lose? Create these dedicated zones, liberalize, free up, give independence, have active business participation in the management of these zones, and see where it takes us. Again, this is not a short-term policy switch. This is a long-term generational play, and we have to start somewhere and start to scale. And again, I think you move away from these debates around import substitution, and the national economy is too fragmented, too unwieldy to have a necessary agility to create the necessary infrastructure, both hard and soft, enabling policy to allow industry to thrive in the economy. And so my simple suggestion is very pragmatically run SEZs and highly incentivized.
Thank you, Martin. Time is no longer my best friend on this session, but I will need to touch base with my West Africa tax leader, Yomi Olubenro. And Yomi, my question is this. The issue of ease of paying taxes, is it a function of legislation or administration or both? And if legislation, in what way has the Finance Act 2020 enhanced the criteria for ease of paying taxes? 2 in 1.
Okay. Thank you, Sheye. So to answer your question quite directly, the issue of ease of paying taxes is a function of both the legislation and administration. But we know that to a very large extent, the law provides the foundation for the administrators, to be able to run the business. So, and that's why we look into the law to say what provisions are there, to create or provide an enabling environment or a simplified environment for taxes to be paid. And I mean, just like its predecessor, Finance Act of 2019, the 2020 Finance Act also made some very good attempts, at consolidating and institutionalizing some of the measures that the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, has been working on around easing the difficulties of paying taxes. And I would just mention maybe just one of them, quite simple but fundamental. Which is the introduction of electronic communications, for example, in the process of tax administration in the country. Therefore, rather than the traditional physical courier, of assessment and correspondences and physical presence of taxpayer, a lot more can now be done virtually because based on the amendment we have in Finance Act 2019, we have similar provision in Finance Act we have a provision in 2019 that kind of focuses on individual, but in 2020 Finance Act, we have provisions relating to companies. So taxpayers and revenue authorities can now exchange electronic correspondences. Now, the exemption I spoke to when I was responding to your question earlier around tax exemption for those living below the poverty line, I mean, those who are earning minimum wage and less, as well as education tax exemption for micro and small businesses, they are all part of the measures towards making sure that we focus our energy on where it really matters, and it eases the burden of paying taxes. On the back of that, from an administration perspective, you see revenue authorities now opening up online portal, for tax assessments, for returns, for payments, tax audit reviews, tax audit meetings are being conducted virtually, and remember also that the Companies Act 2020 that was signed last year also made provisions for some measures that were aimed at making doing business in Nigeria easier. You have virtual AGM introduced, small businesses are no longer mandated to have a statutory audit, one member limited liability company. So we are making incremental progresses from a regulation and from an administration perspective. If you look back 3 years ago, you will appreciate that some progress have been made. If we consolidate on this and then continue to focus on working around the threatening challenges, particularly maybe some of the technology platforms that are being rolled out by revenue authorities. So if we improve on the user experience, the friendliness of the interfaces, we can get the compliance process a lot better. But maybe just on a much broader perspective though, the bigger question that needs to be resolved when it comes to making fundamental changes that will impact the overall ease of paying taxes, we still need to deal with the issue of multiplicity of taxes, and that's a legislation, that's a regulation issue. Because the factors that are considered when you are judging the ease of paying taxes in a country, it includes the number of taxes that you have taxpayers to pay. It includes the amount of time that is required, which is also a trigger or determined by the number of taxes they need to comply with. The simplicity of the process, the predictability of the rules, there are a lot more that we can do in this area. So in as much as we are making piecemeal changes through the Finance Act process, which is quite commendable, the right way to go, but it doesn't really eliminate the need for a comprehensive regulatory reform. In fact, making an annual amendment by way of Finance Act itself can, after some time, even create some bit of problem, because what you're going to have is that you're going to have your tax law spread across multiple pieces of legislation, and we can also complicate the process because you are looking at what was changed in 2019, that further amended in 2020, that further reintroduced in 2021. So ideally, every 3 to 5 years, what you are supposed to do is to have a consolidation of all of the changes and provide a single reference for all of the laws. So we are making appreciable progress, but we need to recognize that it's a marathon. We have started well, we are headed in the good direction, but we need to move forward faster, because the journey is still far.
Thank you, Yomi. And with those remarks from you, bearing in mind that the message of eternity cannot be delivered without leaving the pulpit, I would like to thank all my panelists for this session, for their very insightful contributions. And I know that any other time we invite you to be part of this program, you will also be willing to join us. Bosin, over to you as you take over from here. Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Seyi Arowolo. Thank you so much to members of your panel. Martin Davis, thank you so much. Isaac, thank you so much. The representative of Dr. Walter from the World Health Organization, and Yomi Olugbero, thank you so much for those interventions. And of course, to our participants, nearly 700 of you, and you sent in tons of questions and comments and opinion through the chat box. We appreciate that so much. Keep them coming. Thank you very much, my panelists, for this first part of it. It is time now for us to listen to the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning on behalf of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. She's representing the authority of the government of Nigeria at this Deloitte 2021 Nigeria Economic Outlook Conference. I have the singular honor and privilege to invite the Honorable Minister, Mrs. Dr. Zainab Samshina Ahmed, to please take the floor and deliver her presentation as the special guest of this 2021 edition. Honorable Minister, you have the floor, please. Thank you. The Honorable Minister of Finance, we are waiting for your presentation. We appreciate the fact that you've logged on to the conference for quite some time, and we do appreciate the time you are sparing out of your official duties on behalf of the government to be present at this particular event and to speak to us. We're now waiting for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Omo, for the introduction. Let me apologize for joining the meeting late. I had some delays and some technical glitches. I hope you can hear me.
Perfectly well, Honorable Minister.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Let me start by thanking Deloitte for organizing this, and specifically my brother Fatai and the team. I have a presentation to make on behalf of the Federal Government of Nigeria, and the theme of my presentation is the economic outlook for 2021. Can you move to the next slide, please? Let me welcome all the participants in this meeting and say that my presentation will be taking a couple of steps. First of all, I'll be speaking to setting the context, which I must say has been very well set by Martin. And I'm glad that the delay happened because I was now able to listen to Martin and to the panelists. So that's a plus for me. I will also be speaking to the meeting about achieving economic recovery, the actions that we have taken and some of the plans that we take. And then one of my favorite topics, the Strategic Revenue Growth Initiative, and to say upright that Deloitte helped us in developing this initiative and putting it to use. And then I will be speaking to some aspects of the Finance Act 2020. Next slide, please. So it's an honor and a privilege to be here. And I must congratulate Deloitte because this forum is not the first one that Deloitte has made. Deloitte has been consistent in organizing economic outlooks, and it has become an avenue for sharing ideas on our current economic development. And I want to urge Deloitte to keep this up. Next slide, please. Nigeria, like other countries of the world, have been affected significantly by the COVID-19, not only on the health front, but more significantly on the economic front. And after a year of exploring conventional and unconventional policy strategies in both advanced and emerging economies, it has become clear that we are all operating in this very high, uncertain environment, and each country still has to take policy measures that are most relevant to their socio-economic and political context, and that are reasonable and affordable, and also providing benefits that government can afford within its fiscal limits. So there's this misdiagnosis that is possible of the real challenges, or misapplication of policy measures that is a major risk that we see. And if we do fall into any of this major risk, we can do even greater damage to our economics than the disease itself. So whatever we do as a government, we do it with great caution, knowing that the consequences could be dire for the economy. And with this in mind, I'd like to share with you some of the challenges that we face as from our view in the Nigerian economy. Next slide, please. I'm sure everybody knows that COVID-19 has triggered economic downturn globally, and it has also triggered economic downturn in Nigeria. We went into a recession in the second quarter of 2020 with a decline of minus 6.1%. Economic activities in the country are beginning to recover very slowly, and this recovery is reflected in the reduced negative growth of minus 3.6 in the second quarter, in the third quarter of 2020 compared to the second quarter. This in itself is a positive development, because it shows that some of the measures that the government has taken is actually yielding positive results. Slide 6, please. So while we had technically gone into recession, having witnessed 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, I would say that the most impacted sectors in the quarter 3 are the transportation sector, the oil refinery sector, real estate, accommodation and food services, trade, education, crude, petroleum and gas production, as well as the insurance industry. But there are some sectors that actually grew even during this pandemic. And these sectors include quarrying and other mineral production, the telecommunications sector, the cement and manufacturing sector, the financial services has continued to grow, chemicals and pharmaceuticals, food and beverages, public administration, broadcasting and construction. So these sectors have continued to grow. By 2021, the Nigerian economy will recover from recession. And this is according to the IMF, that the Nigerian economy will rebound from the estimated contraction of minus 3.2% on 2020 to a growth of 1.5% in 2021. So between 2023 to 2025, Nigeria's growth is expected to surpass the growth of advanced economies. And you can see from the chart that is in front of you. Next slide, please. The National Bureau of Statistics, our own NBS, projects a higher growth of 3%. This is compared to the 1.5% projected by the IMF for 2021. And in line with this production and consistent commitment and focus on the side of the government to accelerate economic recovery from recession, and also to return to a diversified, sustainable, and inclusive growth, we believe that a growth higher than 1.5% for 2021 is attainable. The expectation is anchored on the various interventions introduced to cushion the effect of the negative consequences of the pandemic, some of which I will touch on shortly. While there's always a lag between intervention and outcome, we can already see the benefits on the economy as recorded in the better than expected results of the third quarter of 2020. Data for quarter 4 2020 is expected to be released by the NBS later in this month of February. Next slide, please. So like other economies, our fiscal position experienced significant pressure due to the sudden but necessary expenditures we have had to undertake while at the same time facing declining revenue. Preliminary figures indicate that as at the end of 2020, the federal government's retained revenue was 3.94 trillion. This represents 73% of the targeted revenue in the 2020 amended Appropriation Act. The federal government share of all revenue was 1.52 trillion, representing 157% performance. So this is an abnormal performance, and it is so because we had projected a crude oil price of $28 per barrel, but we were lucky that the average was much higher than that at the close of 2020. Non-oil revenues, on the other hand, was 1.28 trillion, representing 79% of revised targets. Company income tax VAT also performed at 82 and 68% respectively. Customs revenue performed at 79%. And other revenues, and this include the independent revenues that I heard Tayo mention earlier on, was 993.73 trillion. And we're putting a lot of attention in this area because we see a lot of potential. With respect to money aggregates, the federal government maintained and accommodated a monetary policy stance for the majority of the year. And this reflects the concerns about the impact of the pandemic. So we had an expansionary monetary stance as well. We had to apply considerable efforts to ease the effects of the pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns on households and on businesses. To complement private sector relief funds, the Central Bank of Nigeria had rolled out some targeted interventions, and I'm sure participants are familiar with some of these interventions. Some of these interventions included the targeted credit facility, the agribusiness small and medium investment scheme, the healthcare support intervention facility, where up to 72.9 billion was provided to 73 projects comprising 26 pharmaceutical projects and 47 hospitals. There's also funding provided, special funding provided for the Creative Industry Financing Initiative, where 322 beneficiaries benefited. We had also the Youth Investment Fund Facility, where 395 youths benefited from this facility. We have also the National Mass Metering Program, where 18.58 billion was provided for the procurement of up to about 347,000 electricity meters to ensure that citizens are paying for electricity that is consumed. Next slide, please. So this has been a journey, starting from 2016 when the country went into recession, and the government took a number of measures, addressed the initial shock of the economy going into recession. We developed the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which was our response to that recession of 2016. And that helped us to exit recession 4 quarters after we went into recession. Subsequently, we set up, and I said with the support of Deloitte, a strategic revenue growth initiative, which is meant to drive domestic revenue mobilization and move the revenue to GDP ratio of Nigeria from the then 8% to 15%. Now that revenue to GDP ratio has declined further to 6%, unfortunately, due to the impacts of the COVID-19. We also developed the Economic Sustainability Plan, which was designed to respond to the national health and economic security emergency posed by COVID-19. We have developed the medium-term development plan 2021 to 2025. It's in the final stages of development. And side by side, we're also developing a long-term national development plan, the Nigeria Agenda 2050. This Nigeria Agenda 2050 is designed to enable us meet the SDG goals, as well as the Africa Union Agenda 2063. So what have we done to achieve economic growth? So with the background in mind, let me turn to the highlights of some of the plans that we have had to put in place for recovery, first of all, in 2021. So in 2021, our fiscal initiatives are driven by the Strategic Revenue Growth Initiative, as well as the Finance Act 2020, supported, of course, by the 2021 Appropriation Act. The SRG and the Finance Act will aid the economic recovery process of the Nigerian economy. These initiatives will help us to grow fiscal revenues, help us to improve the ease of doing business, counter the impact of oil fluctuations and the integrated fiscal, and also help us in further integrating fiscal, monetary, and trade policies. We have to, within these two instruments, grow the level of the fiscal revenues, improve the ease of doing business, counter the impact of oil price fluctuations, integrate fiscal and monetary policies. Next slide, please. I'd like to speak about my favorite topic, which is the Strategic Revenue Growth Initiative. The SRGI is a blueprint, a mechanism for enhancing fiscal revenues from 6% to 15% of GDP by the year 2023. This initiative seeks to achieve sustainability in revenue generation, identify, enforce new and existing revenue streams, and achieve cohesion of our people and the tools that we use. The SRGI is designed around three thematic areas. The first thematic area, which is achieving sustainability in revenue generation, is centered around four main levers, and this includes improving collection, closing legal loopholes, collaborating between trading partners, and managing performance. There are a number of initiatives, 21 of them actually, that were carefully selected through a multi-functional selection process. Each of these thematic areas are encapsulated in a portfolio of initiatives with clear deliverables, clear KPIs, targets, timelines assigned to specific ministries, departments, and agencies for implementation. So the second thematic area, identifying new and enforcing existing revenue streams, also is designed around some main levers, which included identifying new taxes, broadening the tax base, expanding and improving VAT, and this is how come we were able to increase VAT from 5% to 7.5%, targeting high net worth individuals, and reviving the economic sectors. And in trying to achieve cohesion within the revenue ecosystem, we had to review the operating models of the critical collecting agencies. We had to align stakeholders on a single platform, for example, the single trading platform, to improve internal capabilities and enhance and automate a lot of our collection processes. Next slide, please. So the SRGI was an instrument that helped us to move from plan to action. The SRGI involved a top-down approach with the numbers in mind that will need to be met, and supplemented by an bottom-up operating improvement levers. Next slide, please. Through this initiative, we are building and strengthening revenue-generating systems through the application of the right incentives, the right safeguards, and performance management systems. There are several initiatives under the SRGI with revenue generation and enhanced potential, which we are closely monitoring, using data-driven performance management to achieve results and the set targets. So the SRGI, we're partnering with relevant ministries, departments, and agencies, but most importantly with the states, because the states also have to contribute to this aspiration of growing our revenue to GDP from 6% to 15% by 2023. We're working right now to review the SRGI, assess what the achievements that we have made, refine it, and subsequently we will launch SRGI 2.0. It will still involve a top-down approach that will be driven by enhanced data and technology to complement the bottom-up approach, which will be aimed at improving our operational efficiencies. We're willing and able to partner with all state governments that have not yet joined us on this transformative journey. Next slide, please. So this graph, this slide shows you where we are in terms of revenue benchmarks. So even when we attain 15%, Nigeria will still be in the lower cadres of revenue performance. You can see South Africa, this is 2018, by the way, South Africa at 29%, Kenya at 18%, and Ghana at 14%, and Nigeria is at 6% at this time. So we need to move the needle. We need to enhance our revenue performance. To help us drive revenue and to help us improve fiscal performance, we have so far developed two financial instruments, the Finance Act 2019 and closely followed by the Finance Act 2020. The Finance Act 2019, I heard Taiwo really elucidating some of the key provisions that we had made fortuitously to improve on the fiscal environment to enhance the growth performance of small, medium enterprises, as if we knew that we were going to have a COVID-19 crisis. So what we did by reducing taxes from 30% to 20% for medium-sized enterprises and from 30% to 0% is what other countries were doing when COVID hit and everybody had to adjust. But the Finance Act 2020 is an add-on to the Finance Act 2019. It's still designed to enable us enhance counter-cyclical measures and also introduce special crisis response initiative. We also have measures in the provisions in the Finance Act that is enabling us to reform fiscal incentives for job creation, fiscal incentives to give relief to taxpayers through mass transit by reviewing downwards import duty regime within the transport sector, by exempting minimum wage earners from paying personal income tax, by reducing the minimum tax payable by corporate entities, and also by exempting animal feeds, rentals and leases of agricultural equipment, commercial aircraft parts from paying of VAT. The Finance Act also contained measures that were targeted at fiscal responsibility, enhancing fiscal responsibility and public procurement, thereby amending the Public Procurement Act and the Fiscal Responsibility Act. The Finance Act also has provisions that is enabling us to ensure closer coordination between the monetary, trade, and fiscal authorities. Next slide, please. The Finance Act also had a provision to bring into law some of the very important measures that have been taken in enhancing the ease of doing business. Improving the ease of doing business is important to help foster Nigeria's recovery, as micro, small, medium enterprises today contribute 84% to the national GDP. They also account for 96% of businesses and 64% of unemployment. So the Finance Act mitigates double taxation risks for the MSMEs. The Finance Act also limits the deductible interest paid by Nigerian companies on loans from foreign lenders. The Finance Act makes provisions for tax-free period for the agricultural sector, and it also incorporates tin capitalization rules. The Finance Act also exempts small companies that are already exempted from paying company income tax and VAT, now also exempted from paying tertiary education tax. There are a number of several changes that are contained in the Finance Act. Now, I want to urge everyone in the meeting to please get a hold of this Finance Act and see some of these changes. We have, in this process, introduced 80 changes into 14 different fiscal laws across the economy. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I want to conclude by thanking participants for being here, and also Previous slide, please. Previous slide, please. And I want to assure you that the federal government remains focused on its economic policies. We remain focused in working to improve revenue generation, enhancing economic competitiveness, attracting foreign direct investments, and ensuring the overall sustainability of the Nigerian economy, of the macroeconomic environment. And some of the work we've done is evident by the significant efforts to turn the economy onto a path of sustainable growth. We have also taken measures to ensure early response to the welfare of the people by the responses that we took to support during the pandemic, and also to provide targeted support to businesses, launching sustainability plan and the strategic revenue growth initiative, timely passage of the budgets for 2020 and 2021, as well as the finance supporting their supporting finance act. We have been facing significant headwinds, and this COVID-19 is just one of them. The health challenge is a major one, but we also have security challenges. We have volatility in oil and non-oil revenue. However, it is our hope that working together, businesses, professionals in the industry, getting our processes right, getting our priorities right, will enable us to use this opportunity to bring the economy to a path of growth and sustainability, and to restore confidence in the people, to recommit to the population and the citizens of Nigeria of the social contract that must exist between the government and the citizens. I want to thank you very much again, to thank Deloitte for this opportunity, and thank all the participants that have been here today. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister for Finance, Budget and National Planning, Dr. Mrs. Zainab Samshuna Ahmed. Thank you so much for your presentation. We appreciate that so much. On behalf of our 700 participants, including members of Deloitte Nigeria and those who are watching this on YouTube, close to 1,000 here and around the world, we say a very big thank you for your presentation. In fact, the most I looked into the Q&A box, and the most common request I'm getting is for your presentation to be shared. It was also very opposite and very important that you listened to Martin Davis' presentation and the first panel. We appreciate that very much. And of course, in talking about the Deloitte team, we appreciate them also for bringing you here on board from Fatai Ferrari, who is the CEO for the West Africa, and Sheyarolo Yomi Olugbenro. Of course, you know, the finance minister, honorable minister, you deal with all of these folks. So there's quite a whole lot of people you have to remember their names and all of them. So quite a whole lot are in your position. We really appreciate your presentation and making the time to stay with us on this. We will do a group photograph a bit later, but I want to quickly take one or two questions from the participants to you, the Honorable Minister. And I will start with the presentation made by Martin Davis. And his presentation dwelt on what I refer to as the traffic light, the red, the orange, and the green. The red is response to the COVID-19 crisis and the economic problems. The second, which is called recovery phase, I call that the orange light. Then the green light is thrive. So respond, recover, and thrive. So red, orange, and green. Now, briefly, in what stage do you think Nigeria really is? And your presentation, what does it really point to? Are we still at a recovery phase? And do you think everything you have presented can take Nigeria to the thriving phase? That's the first question, Honorable Minister.
Well, we are, so there's a bit of a mix for me. When you look at the COVID-19, the question has still not been answered. Are we still in the first phase, or are we in the second phase, second wave? And I don't have an answer for that because I'm not personal. So if we're in the second wave, then I will have said Nigeria's response has been a good one. And we can comfortably say we are in the recovery stage. And I hope we're in the second phase so that we're not facing any more health challenges. We are in the recovery phase. The recovery is indicated by the performance of the Nigerian economy in the third quarter of 2020. It shows the movement of almost 2.48% from between one quarter and another. And that's the highest growth rate we've ever witnessed in the country today from all of this years, between one quarter and another. So that's a very good performance. The fact that we have gone into recession and it appears that we will really be coming out of it very quickly also confirms the fact that we are on the path to recovery. All the predictions that have been done, whether it's the World Bank or the IMF or National Bureau of Statistics, is that by 2021, Nigeria will be in a positive territory growth. So we are on the path of recovery. We do hope that within the medium term that we will get to that thriving state, because we want to attain a growth that is consistent and that is inclusive, not growth that is driven by revision in the crude oil price, but that some of our fundamentals have changed and that the macroeconomic stability has been achieved.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. My second question is that now at that very particular thriving stage, one other thing that Dr. Martins Davis mentioned is about industrial manufacturing and industrialization of Nigeria. So my question is, does the strategic, the new Agenda 2050, would that drive this industrial manufacturing that we have seen examples across a number of East Asian, Asia-Pacific economies? And do you think this will deliver that for Nigeria during the thriving phase? Are we laying the foundation right now under this recovery phase, and how?
So the beauty of the development plan we're working on now is that the majority of the participants are private sector participants. So there are states are represented, local governments are represented, but so is the federal government. So it's truly a national plan that we're developing. We all agreed without any exception that Nigeria must industrialize. That it's only an industrialized nation that can achieve the kind of growth that we are aspiring to. So one of our targets is to become to become an industrialized nation in the next 4 to 5 years. So whatever we need to do to make sure that happens will now be detailed out in the implementation plan. And this plan is still work in progress. But we're all clear that we must face manufacturing. We must be able to support the small, medium enterprises, light industry, as well as heavy industry.
So, Honorable Finance, Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, one question from my Q&A box is very simple. That's from Osinachuku Nwosu, and it says, thank you, Honorable Minister. My concern is how do we communicate the progress made so far and actions taken to the man on the street or the woman on the street, please?
Communication is very important. Unfortunately, we have not done as well as we need to in terms of communication. And we are doing a rethink and reset of our communication strategy. So beyond using the normal, traditional media, we've all, as heads of agencies, have had to start using alternative means of communication. In addition to that, we're also physically going out and calling attention to the projects that have been executed. There's a lot of work that has been done. But every time we have a public event, people are like, we don't know this thing. And so communications has been one of our weakest links, and we're working to make sure that is mitigated and improved upon.
Honorable Minister, you just put it perfectly. You know, This is this young man and young lady, and both of them in the dark room, and the gentleman was winking at the lady, but she can't see him. So until there's light in the room, then they can both see each other. So let there be light.
And I can tell you that I believe in the power of the sunshine.
Thank you so much. I take that from Dr. Martin. Now I'm going to be a little bit unconventional. I'm going to ask a member of the Deloitte executive team to ask one question or two very quickly, at least one or two members of the executive team to ask a direct question of the Honorable Minister of Finance. Please, you can decide amongst yourself, but I'll go by alphabetical order of your surnames, if you allow me.
Bosun, if you do that, I will seize the initiative. The Honorable Minister knows that when I have the opportunity, I will jump in right ahead.
Yomi, apologies. I was referring to you as Taiwo. Why did I call you Taiwo?
I know. How did you know that was going to be my question, Honorable Minister?
No, I have to preempt you now.
Taiwo is the first of a set of twins. So that's also
and he's not the twin.
So it's not a twin. So that would have gone to Arowolo, by the way. But Yomi, you have the floor.
So Honorable Minister has answered my first question. So the other question is around the strategic revenue growth initiative. So you've alluded to it, the positive of fund and the challenge that the country is facing, from a revenue standpoint. So we know we're making some progress on the first version, and we're grateful for the opportunity and the input that Deloitte had to make into that particular process. But like you did mention, I think it is time for us to then recalibrate that, because the first SRGI was done when we were just getting out of the recession of the last 4 or 5 years. So what's the plan? Because you touched briefly around that. So what's the plan and what's the timeline in terms of when you think we can be talking of 2.0 of SRGI?
So what we've done is we've just started a process to do a report on the performance of the SRGI. So it helps us to see what has worked and what has not worked. We've asked agencies to all turn in, using the KPIs, their performance, and then we aggregate the report. Then we will now hold a consultative process to all collectively agree on how we can refine it. But I can tell you that we've already decided that we must add a thematic area that is centered around tax administration and tax compliance. We noticed during the period that revenue collecting agencies are busy measuring their performance on revenue collection rather than tax compliance. So we want to shift focus now to tax compliance, because when you achieve tax compliance, the revenue will follow it. And compliance is both on the side of the tax collector, but as well as the revenue agencies, compliance to their own laid down processes and procedures. So that's one of the new things that we want to add in the SRGI 2.0. But then it will be a collective process, and we will all have an agreement. And we will be reaching out to Deloitte to be part of that consultation.
Wilson, can I speak?
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you so much, Yomi and Honorable Minister of Finance. Folani Fatai, you have the floor, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for giving us this opportunity. We appreciate you being with us today. My question is what we discussed before. I've mentioned it before with you, and it's on VAT. But before I raise my question, I also request Bosley that after my question, let's allow Martin Davis to ask the question to the minister as well. So my question, the Honorable Minister, is, it's like you know, Nigerian VAT is one of the lowest, as agreed. But one topical point that is of importance is, how do we improve and revolutionize input VAT system in Nigeria by taking it away from the current arrangement that provided a restricted input VAT claim arrangement? The point is around making our input VAT system to be in line and consistent with what you see all over the world. Even countries around us within the West Africa region have achieved this. And I think it's high time we start to look in and do detailed studies and look at it in detail, where we need to move away from what, in quotes, tend to work around the modified sales tax system to a more VAT structure that we see all over the world. The belief is that if we implement appropriate input VAT system in the way it is to be done, it will give a bit of more room that we cannot talk of balancing the increase in rate of VAT with the input VAT system. I mean, most countries are talking in double digits in terms of their VAT rate, but because they have a very right input VAT system, it allows them to make this adjustment. That would be my question. And like I mentioned in the past, we're still willing to work with you and the federal and the FRS to really put this in place so that it can be something we can do over a period. And then the input VAT system can really make a lot of revolutionary improvements in the Nigerian VAT system.
Well, thank you very much, Fatai. And true, you've been consistent from the design of the SRGI to date. But you see, what we've been trying to do is incremental changes. You know the nature of the Nigerian economy. If you do too many changes at a time, then it means you design to fail. So I wish we could have in 2021 also do another round of changes or improvements on the VAT. We had to step back because we made a commitment, a general commitment that we will not increase any taxes. So we didn't want to take any measure that would be interpreted to mean that we're increasing VAT. But we do have to improve on this VAT regime that we're currently improving. And when I say improve, it doesn't mean increase in the first place. And you're right. When taxpayers are able to recover VAT more easily, the increase in a new to a higher rate will be more acceptable. So we'll appreciate your support from you, because this is an area in which you are an expert. And already we did a consultation on the Finance Act Monday this week. We're already calling for inputs for Finance Act 2021. We hope that this one we will not have the crisis that we have had this year, and that we'll have a much longer period to actually consult and take inputs and make sure that a lot more people are carried along.
You have my commitment and the entire member of my team that will work with you on this.
Thank you very much.
It could be a journey of 2-3 years, but at least we can do it progressively. Well, with you,
at least to do the studies, if you start by doing the studies, make the assessments, and then we start the changes on incremental basis, so to get to where we want to go.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Just a few more of your minutes, if we can just get that waiver from you, Honorable Minister, to take a bit more of your time under the existing protocols. Martin Davis, could you please turn on your microphone and your camera, and then engage the Honorable Minister for just about a minute on the key questions still being asked about industrialization, trade, and AFCFTA. So Davis, you and the Honorable Minister can banter this together, because the whole idea of Nigerian industrializing, some folks believe this will not happen in 1 or 2, 3 years, maybe 4 years down the line. So the question is, how do the progression between now and then, how does it happen, and what needs to happen? Martin, take that first, throw that to the Honorable Minister of Finance, please. It's your call.
Thank you very much. If I may just add to that, and just maybe very much a macro, longer term question or thought, provocative thought, Minister, if I may ask you. And it's not so much directed at your ministry as it is the Nigerian government. If we see the significant almost incredulous rise of equity prices, particularly in green technology shares, in the last 12 months. We seem to be at the beginnings of not so much a commodity super cycle, but a new energy tech super cycle. This looks to me almost an inflection turning point, and the markets are recognizing it of a decades to come trend. We will see similar dramatic shifts in coming months, I would think, out of the Biden administration around an entirely new energy strategy in the US. This does not bode well, arguably, for an oil-dependent economy or traditional means of powering our economies into the future. In light of this, if this thesis is correct, that we're at this inflection point of a long-term megatrend, what is the Nigerian government's thinking around, again, coming back to the point raised by the chair of diversification, considering the very real imperative to do so now because of what is this dramatic change that is taken place globally, that is not being caused but undoubtedly accelerated through this COVID-19 period. Minister, thank you.
Martin, thank you very much. The last time we met was in South Africa. We were developing the SRGI. And even then, you were calling attention to the existential threat of the oil industry. Any country in the world today that is not recognizing that the oil and gas industry is on the decline is putting the whole of its economy in jeopardy. So we do recognize that. We're currently working on revising the petroleum industry bill. And the purpose for us is to get whatever we can get and sweat the industry while we can. We're shifting focus to gas. And for us, gas will be to drive development in the Nigerian economy itself as a growth driver. We also are working on policies that have to do with greening the Nigerian economy. Nigeria has been one of the first movers, at least in the African continent, to float a green bond. So we go to the market, we actually go to the market to get financing for projects that are classified as green projects. And we've been doing that for a couple of years now. We want to be able to maximize the revenues that we can get from oil to develop the non-oil sector, to develop the green economy. We're working on fiscal policies that will encourage investors to come and invest in the Nigerian economy in solar power and other green initiatives within the country. We have a long way to go, and it's not going to be an easy journey for us. This over-dependence did not start today. We've started doing that by recalibrating our budgets to reduce the reliance on the oil revenues. And if you look at the Nigerian GDP, the contribution of the oil and gas industry has been on the decline. It's about, even before the crisis, it's 9%. So when you have an economy that is the size of the Nigerian economy and the contribution of one sector is 9%, it's really is not an economy that you will say is dependent on that economy. It is better to say that government revenues are dependent on oil, but the Nigerian economy is diversified as it is. The Nigerian economy is largely driven by activities of the private sector. And that's why somehow, despite all the crises, you still see a reasonable level of resilience, because government's contribution into the GDP is not up to 10, is roughly about 10%. The size of the government budget is so small compared to the size of the larger economy. For us, it's work in progress. We have joined the COP We have designed our nationally determined indicators. The Minister of Environment is working on a process to review our achievement of those indicators, because there's a midterm review that is going on. We have not done as well as we had planned because we started late, and we're trying to now integrate the practice of getting MDAs to flag within their budget provisions that they have made to meet those indicators. So for us, we're making progress, even though it is small, but we're working in the right direction.
Well, thank you so much, Honorable Minister of Finance, and thank you, Martin, for that intervention. We appreciate that so much. I think at this point I would want us to quickly do the picture with the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, and I'm going to say to the technical team that we would want to align the Finance Minister and the entire management team of executive management team of Deloitte first to take their group photograph with the Minister of Finance first. If you can just arrange the screen from the back end so that we can have the Minister of Finance and the rest of you in the gallery, and that would just be quick. We'll do that first, then we'll do that with the rest of the panelists. Let's have the members of the Deloitte Nigeria team first. And I would just include myself as a member of the executive team of Deloitte Nigeria for this purpose. Okay, now I got everybody smiling. Now we can take the family picture. Okay, thank you very much. I guess that is done. Okay, we could just rearrange the screen a little bit for the panelists. Ari, where are you? The IMF Country Director for Nigeria. Ari, I know you've been with us for the last 2-3 hours. Thank you so much. Ari, if you're around, please come back.
I'm here.
Ari, thank you. Please come back. Thank you. It's good to see you.
I've been listening very carefully.
It's getting close to lunchtime. We appreciate that. And where is the representative of the WHO? We would like to have you as well. Okay, now that we have Ari here, I'll let Ari later just speak to the Minister of Finance for just about a minute, and then we'll move on to the second panel. Very quickly, could we please arrange the screen to have Ari and other panel members who will be coming through in the afternoon. Tokwalade Nusi, Yemi Saka, Funke Opeke, if you're in the room, and Akin Banuso, if you're there, could you please join this family picture, please? Other panelists for the members of the panel for the first panel and the second panel, please. Okay, thank you very much. And on the final note, for everyone, members of participants, we are looking at about more than 600 on this particular call for now on the Zoom and others on YouTube. If you're on the part of the participants, you want to join the family picture, we now want to do the full gallery. Please turn on your videos and let's do this together. Other members of staff of Deloitte Nigeria, please let us smile to the camera. Please turn on your cameras, please. Yunus Abdullahi, thank you so much. We appreciate seeing you. Funke Opeke, main one. Okay, that's the main woman. Okay, let's put it there. Okay, thank you so much. Who else is joining us? Naiju, Sarah, Zainab. Who else wants to join?
Where is Linda?
Linda, the Honorable Minister is asking of you, please. If they show up.
Good morning, Honorable Minister.
Hi, Linda. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
There you go.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
I want more of our female participants to please turn up. We've had too much more of the men in suits, men in black here. Even though some of them are in blue suits like Yemi Saka, Alede Nusi, and Bosin. I can see Bosin in blue suit as well. Okay. Okay, let's have a full screen. We need just about 3 or 4 more participants to please turn on their cameras, please. And then we'll just do this in a few seconds. Then we'll go to the second panel.
I can see Zainab IMF.
Oh, okay. Zainab Manga, where are you?
Yes. I can
Okay,
see her
well,
screen. Okay.
yes. Okay, Zainab, where are you? Odutayo, thank you so much. Shea Usman, thank you so much. Femi Abegunde, thank you so much. Who else wants? Okay, here we go. Honorable Mr. Here she is.
Yes, I see her now.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's good to have you. Okay, I think we can do the picture now from the technical team. Thank you very much. All smiles, please, everyone.
Oh.
Okay, here we go. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for that. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to allow the IMF country director for Nigeria, Ari Icing, to ask a question of the Honorable Finance Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Ari, you have the floor for about a minute or two to engage the minister, please.
Actually, thank you very much. I actually have no questions. I was paying very close attention on this issue of reform on the tax environment. The IMF and the Ministry of Finances are very well aligned. We engage very often. We are supportive of the strategy, and our experts in the Fiscal Affairs Department engage with the ministry often, and we hope to continue interacting and supporting the ministry as much as possible in building capacities. And we are a very close partner of Nigeria and the Ministry of Finance in this important reform that the ministry is leading. So this is my comment. I don't have questions. I just have wishes and desire to partner with Nigeria and with the ministry on its important reforms. Thank you.
Thank
you,
Ari.
Ari. Thank you.
Sure
If I may, moderator, let me just confirm that we are working very closely with the IMF. We asked them for specific technical support on some of our physical issues. So we have support from the IMF in improving tax administration, customs administration, as well as compliance in those two major revenue generating agencies. They have supported us with an assessment mission. We've agreed on a couple of priority focus areas, which we're now beginning to roll out, and we are going to integrate those areas into the SRGI 2.0, and we will have continuous support from them in terms of trying to reach the KPIs that will be set.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister of Finance.
So thanks to IMF for the support, for the technical support.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister for Finance, Budget and National Planning. We appreciate your time so much. It's been a time well spent with you. We appreciate your being our special guest on this Deloitte Nigeria Economic Outlook to 2021. We thank you so much for your time, for staying with us for this time, and all our participants. We want to go straight now, and Minister of Finance, stand around, stick around.
Thank you. No, I want to ask for your permission to fall out. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much on behalf of Deloitte Nigeria, the executive team, on behalf of the entire Deloitte team, not just in Nigeria, but around the world, in West Africa specifically, and on behalf of the Managing Director. May I quickly just allow, Folarin, if you are there, would you please give the Honorable Minister a parting shot, please, quickly, as the CEO of Deloitte West Africa, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bosin. The Honorable Minister, we appreciate you for being part of this session today. We really appreciate you. You've been very humble and generous to us for attending past economic outlook that we've held. And you're also here today virtually with us. We appreciate you. We know your time is not easy to get you down to be part of this session, but you created the time for us. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much. On behalf of Deloitte globally and Deloitte Nigeria, we so much appreciate you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fatai. Thank you to everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you very much.